Good afternoon, and welcome to this event hosted by Indians for Biden National Council. We deeply appreciate your time and your enthusiasm in participating in this race. We recognize that on a Saturday afternoon, there are several other things that you could have done, but we are so thankful that you're here. Indians for Biden National Council is a volunteer organization that was formed about 7 weeks ago to make sure that we galvanize the entire swath of the Indian American community to vote for the Biden Harris ticket. We also want to make sure that we dispel some of the misinformation and disinformation being circulated about the movement of the Indian American community towards the Trump Pence ticket. And I'll get to more of that in just a second. Let me frame this event first. Let me first of all just briefly introduce myself. My name is Sanjeev Joshipura, and I'm speaking from Fairfax, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. I'm the National Director of Indians for Biden National Council. In terms of this event, we will be joined today by three stellar panelists who I've had the privilege of knowing for a while. We're going to be talking about this election and some of the issues that we will be discussing therein. You know, it's always said in every election that this is the election of a lifetime. This time, it's really true. What's at stake for the Indian American community is what we're going to be discussing. Why this election is important for us, our kids, and our grandkids. And we're going to be covering a plethora of different issues, such as the economy, the handling of the pandemic, and foreign affairs, including US-India relations. But before I get deeper into the event, let me take a moment to acknowledge a big occurrence from yesterday. I know all of you know this, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the passing of a judicial giant of our times, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Justice Ginsburg authored and dissented in several seminal decisions that have played a big role in American society, played a big role in terms of women and their place in our society, played a role in terms of immigrants and minorities, which of course includes the Indian American community. And so what I'd like to do to start with is lead this event in a moment of silence to remember and honor Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life. So if you could please all join me in a moment of silence before we continue with this event. Thank you. Thank you all. Let me now just take a minute to tell you a little bit more about what I do in my day job because it's particularly germane to this event. I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization called In Diaspora, which was founded in 2012. And In Diaspora is a collection of very prominent Indian diaspora leaders around the world in different geographies and different professions. We focus on a few specific things, including philanthropic involvement by the Indian American community and the global Indian diaspora, US-India relations, forging strong connections worldwide among Indian diaspora in different professions, and indeed on nonpartisan socio-political engagement by the Indian community. And the last one is particularly relevant to this event. Recently, In Diaspora, in conjunction with API Vote, commissioned a survey which was conducted by the prominent sociologist at University of California, Riverside, Dr. Karthik Ramakrishnan. And this was a survey about Indian American political attitudes and the issues of importance to the community. The survey, which went into great detail about various different topics, basically said in a Cliff Notes headlines version that 65% of the Indian American community leans towards voting for Joe Biden, and 28% leans towards voting for Donald Trump. And the issues of importance to the Indian American community are no different than the issues of importance to Americans at large. They include education, healthcare, handling of the pandemic, economy, jobs, and so on and so forth, the kinds of issues that you would expect. So while, in the last election in 2016, there was about 77% of the vote that went to Hillary Clinton and about 23% of the Indian American community's vote that went to Donald Trump. And so I think the headline could be that there might be a small, perceptible shift towards Donald Trump, but definitely not as large as what some articles are making it out to be. The vast majority of the Indian community still is very much in favor of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, with that said, let me quickly introduce our panelists. And like I said, these are people that I've had the privilege of knowing for a long, long time. I'll start with Nisha Biswal, who is going to play a dual role today as moderator of the discussion and a panelist. Nisha is the president of the US-India Business Council, USIBC, part of the US Chamber of Commerce. She was also the Assistant Secretary of South and Central Asian Affairs at the State Department in the Barack Obama administration. And before that, she's held various leadership roles on US Senate staff. We also have as one of our panelists, Sonal Shah, who is the executive director of the Beek Center for Social Innovation and social innovation at Georgetown University. She was also recently the policy director for Mayor Pete's presidential campaign. Previously, she used to be deputy assistant in the White House to President Barack Obama, again for social innovation. And she was also part of the Biden-Sanders Unity Committee and a senior policy advisor on that. Last but not least, we have Anand Shah. Anand is a multifaceted person in the entrepreneurial space and in the nonprofit space. He was the founder of Sarvajal that provides clean drinking water in rural India. Also served as the CEO of the Piramal Foundation, which was geared towards youth empowerment in India. He is a consultant with the Vedanta University upcoming in India, and he is the co-founder of Indicor, which is a non-religious nonprofit entity that provides the Indian diaspora a channel to connect with Indian development. He was also the co-founder of Ola's electric mobility arm and has previously worked at BMW. Before I turn it over to Nisha, just a quick logistical note for the attendees. At the end of this conversation between Nisha, Sonal, and Anand, there will be a Q&A session for about 20 minutes that is moderated with the audience. And the way for the audience to participate and engage with us today is to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. Click on that box, and in there, you can type your questions. I will be moderating them and posing them to the three panelists today. So with that, Nisha, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. And, thank you to all of you who are joining us. I particularly want to thank Anu Biswal, my mother-in-law, for giving me this idea and this opportunity. And then want to thank Sudip Patnaik and all of our friends in the ODIA community who have been engaging throughout the week in drumming up support for this event, but also more importantly, in drumming up support around the Biden-Harris campaign. So thank you all, and thank you for joining us. What we thought we would do today is kind of underscore a little bit of what's at stake in this election. As Sanjeev was saying, everyone comes into every election saying it's important. But really, I think this year, this election, this contest between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is a definitional contest of what is America going to be moving forward. And so we will try to come into that conversation from a multiplicity of angles. First of all, I think Anand is going to talk to us about, from the perspective of the Indian American community, what is at stake. Sonal is going to talk about the economic policies and the health policies and how a Biden-Harris administration would address major questions on COVID and the way forward, and as well as the impact on the economy and how do we get this economy back on its feet. I will talk a little bit about foreign policy, about how, what is America's standing in the world? How do we think about the US-India relationship as we move forward, and what a Biden-Harris administration will value in its engagement with countries around the world. With that said, let me turn to Anand to kick us off.
Thank you, Nisha, and thank you all of you for being on this call and spending some of your Saturday with us. I know that it is cliche to talk a bit about why this is such a critical election, but for us as Indian Americans, Indian immigrants who in our story in the recent past have come from a faraway land to America, it really is important. I want to ask each of you to put yourselves back in time for a moment. If you immigrated to America, what it felt like when you decided that you were going to make this decision to move across the world to this nation, what it stood for, and what that meant for your dreams of the future. If you were born here, like me, what that meant for your families and how far we've come potentially in the period of time to get where we are. I was reading about Ruth Bader Ginsburg yesterday, and she had noted in a speech 10 years ago about her own story, that her parents were folks who fled Jewish persecution in Europe and came to America pre-World War II. She was born here. And in her lifetime, she noted that in one generation, they went from being refugees, fleeing pain, to her being able to be a woman on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Our story actually tracks a lot like that. Many of our kids have gone quite far, and a lot of that is a testament to the United States. In the past 60 years, and it's only been 60 years, and that was a period when we immigrated, the idea of we the people in the United States, this idea that every person is equal and has equal rights to vote, to have civil rights, to be able to achieve a future, it's a new thing as part of the American experiment of getting the democracy to truly treat everyone equally. We have been grand contributors to that. The idea of us coming here as Indians and now Indian Americans and what we have contributed has made America the great nation it is, not just for us, but also has paved the path for others. This is on the ballot this year. The second point I'd like to make is that values and character and actions of people in office really do matter. We may not see it in the immediate sense for all the talk of little things here and there, whether it's taxes or XYZ, but to be very clear, if either of my children acted like some of the people we see in power today, there would be turmoil in my household. And that if this was my mother looking at me, I would have taken a big slap in the face. And I think that all of you can relate to that a little bit. We come from a community that prides itself significantly on values of sanskar, of dharma, of being good human beings, and that being good over time supersedes all of the ups and downs of life. That is something that the American story has meant to us. As we came here as immigrants, right, we believe that yes, it may not be a perfect place, but at the end, what is right in the name of humanity is what will be upheld. I've heard a lot of stuff as a third point over the last number of weeks of, really I would call it the WhatsApp nature of what this election is about and what Donald Trump means to the US-India relationship versus what Biden means to US-India relationship and what those topics are. First and foremost, this election is about America, our future as Indians in America, our children and our grandchildren, and what that looks like. But secondly, I want to also call out that we as Indian Americans are rising in importance in this nation in terms of our achievements, in terms of the diversity of the roles that we play and the aspirations of our young people, in terms of the roles that we've played in government, not just in this administration, the previous one, and the hard work of many of you and many on this call over the past 20, 30 years of us being able to be people who play a role in how this country is shaped and governed. Secondly, India is rising in importance, right? In the global sphere, India is a country that has a lot of hope in it. It is a country that is a counterbalance to others, and Nisha can speak much more importantly to this. And I want to lay out that that has been a continuum that's been building over the past 20 years, if not longer. It isn't all of a sudden in the past 4 years that the US and India have become friends, right? And we all should recognize that we contribute to that idea, because as Indian Americans who have fondness for the country we came from, we're also ambassadors and exercisers of our power as Americans who want to see these nations come more closely together. That's the symptoms, or the results of that hard work is what we are seeing. And I'd ask that we see the forest and not the trees in this situation. There's a lot that went into building both our prominence in this country and the closeness of these countries that we both hold fondly and dear together. I'd like to end by saying that this election is really, in my mind, about whether the best is still ahead of us, whether all of the contributions of us and those who will come after us and our children and future immigrants will continue to make America the guiding light for the world, both in terms of the choice of our governing system as a democracy, the innovation that we create, and the opportunity that makes it possible for those of us, here to be able to achieve the things in life that we want, or whether the best is behind us and that we need to go out there and protect, the borders and walls, both figurative and real, that make sure that we preserve whatever it is we think that was great before. And it is my belief that greatness is still something we have and something we will continue to create as a nation. Indian Americans are playing a stronger and stronger role in that. And in this election, we have a critical vote. I appreciate that no matter who you're voting for, please get out there and vote as an Indian American, and hope that you choose to vote for Joe Biden because of what he stands for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anand. And you asked that question about, is the best still ahead of us? Before I turn to Sonal, I'm going to share an anecdote that Joe Biden usually shares when he talks about what makes America great. He tells a story about how during the last years in the life of Lee Kuan Yew, then Vice President Biden was visiting him towards the end of his life in Singapore, and had a conversation. And Lee Kuan Yew said, the Chinese, they are all over the United States looking for that little black box. And Biden said, he asked Lee Kuan Yew, what do you mean by the little black box? And he said, the little black box that defines what keeps America so, great, generation after generation. And Biden said, oh, I can tell you what that is. Two things. One, we have had the best and the brightest from around the world come to our shores, and we have welcomed them. And they have brought with them their ideas, their culture, their hunger, their drive, and their hard work. And that has been a key part of keeping America great, generation after generation after generation, and keeping us innovative. And secondly, we have enshrined in our democracy that right to question authority, to know that the best answers don't necessarily come top down, but that each amongst us has something to contribute, and that we can question power, we can question authority, and that right will be protected. I think this was a brilliant, brilliant insight and analysis from Joe Biden in what it has meant to America to be able to continue to be an open democracy. And with that, I'm going to turn to Sonal to talk a little bit about the policies that a Biden-Harris administration would espouse that would help bring us back to that era of greatness.
Nisha, thank you. And that was such a great quote. I think it also sort of, in many ways, defines who Joe Biden is. and how he thinks. Despite what people may want to define him, it's sort of those types of statements are the things that that's where his North Star is, and that's things that he actually believes in. He's saying it when he doesn't have to, and that's important. And Nisha, thank you. Sanjeev, thank you. Anand, thank you. And I also want to thank your mother-in-law, Auntie Anu. Auntie, thank you for your leadership and for pushing us to do this. So I want to just talk a little bit about the economy. I know there's going to be a foreign policy discussion, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the economic discussion and what the economic policies of Joe Biden are. And this is, again, not new stuff. This is stuff he's done in the past. So please ground it, and I will continue to show you where he's done it. The first part about the economy, and we all know this, is that we have to deal with COVID. And what he understands is that we need to deal with the COVID crisis because it's a health crisis that is creating an economic crisis. It's not an economic crisis that created a health crisis. And what that means in doing that is a government needs to have a consistent message and a consistent approach. The federal government needs to work with the state government, needs to work with the county government, needs to work with the district governments. We have to be able to work together to make sure that the crisis is being handled. That's collection of data on a regular basis. That's making sure that we're giving consistency as to how everybody should approach it and what we're learning from one region to another, what's working, what's not working. It's also making sure that masks are available, PPEs are available for doctors, for healthcare workers, for people working in hospitals. It's guaranteeing and making sure that we can give paid leave to families who get COVID and have to take time off because they're sick or their family members are sick. It's making sure they can get paid for that. It's also helping restart the small business community and making sure that capital is available, not just PPP loans, but once we're gone a year from now, what are those small businesses going to do? And what he has in his package is an ability to give is money to make sure that those small businesses can get restarted and get moving, really helping Americans have confidence that their government is dealing with this. And the example that I can give on this is how he handled Ebola. Ebola it's actually much worse than COVID was. And what they managed to do when Vice President Biden was handling this is Ebola was kept, it was contained. It was all of the countries that had it. It was in Liberia, it was in Kenya, it was in the Congo, and people were traveling back and forth then too, but we had a consistency of approach. The federal government told the state government what to do. The state government worked with the city governments, worked with the county governments, and they were managing Ebola. It never came to our shores in the same way because we actually knew how to manage it, and we managed it in an approach. And that was Vice President Biden. He led it all in the Obama administration, and that is important to recognize why that's important, why it can be managed. But to do the economic and to manage the economy, we also have to deal with the health piece, and that's important to know. So what are we going to do on the economy? And that is about building back better. And what I mean by building back better, and I just want to break this down, is how do we invest in the economy of the future? As Anand mentioned, as Nisha mentioned, we can't just invest in money, can't just make money. Money also needs to give people jobs. We need to make sure people can continue to innovate. We need to make sure that we're competing in the world around us. And there are a few places where we can do that. But one, we can manufacture more in the United States. We have been manufacturing everywhere around the world, but we've been shutting down manufacturing in the United States. What's a way we can do that? We can start buying American as the government itself. The federal government is one of the largest purchasers of goods and services around the world. Buying American allows for manufacturing to come back in the US. That increases jobs, that increases the opportunity to people for innovation on different technologies and different approaches. So that's one. Two, it's clean energy. Now we talk about climate change, we talk about clean energy. It sounds like a big idea, but let me break it down and what it means for us. One, if you're a gas station owner, it's making sure you have the ability to put in charging stations. So if we're buying gas, we should be able to charge our car. My brother has an electric car. I think Nisha has a hybrid. Others have you have these cars, but you can't go across country. You can't travel to different places if you don't have a charging station. So giving the ability for gas station owners to put in charging stations, making sure our grid, the electric grid that we all use, is modernized, and making sure we can use more energy efficiency in that grid. And that's jobs that get get created here? How do we help stores? How do we help shop owners? How do we help big commercial buildings make it more efficient to have? How can we put solar on our homes and also get access to that energy? That is also, but those are new jobs that get created, people that can put them in, people that can maintain it, creating that. But that's an important part of the clean energy economy. It's in the construction industry. How do we build new materials that can handle and withstand hurricanes and tornadoes and all of those things that, I'm in Texas right now, and we're seeing 3 hurricanes currently coming at us, and we have to be prepared. And every time a hurricane comes, we can't have all the roads flooded out and then having to start all over again, rebuilding them. We have to build new materials that can withstand those pressures to do that. And we have the ability to innovate and create that ability to do that. And then the last is strengthening our caring workforce, both for younger children. We're seeing this in COVID right now, where if you're a parent and you have young children, you are managing there's not enough teachers, there's not enough daycare centers, there's not enough. We should be able to create a new workforce that can help with that can work with our children, that can create a new economy there. And also for older Americans, I'm staying here with my parents and living with my parents right now. What happens when they need help and they need care and there's not enough workers to even come to the homes? Do we want to just put our parents in homes? No, we actually want them to stay in their homes, but how do we make sure they're also taken care of? And creating that care workforce and really working on that, that is a new economy. That is an economy that has to evolve, because as our country is aging, we also have to make sure we're taking care of our elderly in a respectful and a dignified manner. And so with that, I think what's important for us to think about is, and then the last piece I think is important, and I know we'll talk about this, is healthcare. It's really making sure healthcare is available to everybody across the country. We should not have to worry if we lose our jobs that we lose our healthcare. We should not have to worry that if we want to change jobs, we have to worry about healthcare. So what Vice President Biden is offering is called a public option. So some of you may be on Medicare, my parents on Medicare. It's allowing people to buy an option to be in Medicare and get the same things that you all are getting, but those of you that might be on Medicare, other families can get access to, but they'll pay into it, but they will be at a cheaper level. What that means is insurance companies have to compete for those new customers and offer better services and offer better approaches to providing healthcare. But that is important because it's important for all of us. It's important for me. Every time I think about changing a job, I think about, can I get access to healthcare? If I don't have it, will my parents have to take on a burden? Will my family members have to take on a burden? But that's something that we should be able to do as this country. This shouldn't be difficult. We should know how to do that. And that's sort of what he's taking care of. So I'm going to leave it at that. But I think it's important to recognize that there's myths out there, and these myths are important to recognize. We keep talking about the fact that Democrats are bad for the economy, Republicans are good for the economy. So I just want to give 2 facts here. Under Bill Clinton, we saw one of the largest expansions of the US economy. It's where a lot of the tech industry started to grow and where we saw a lot of the growth happening. Growth at that time was 4.1% GDP year on year. That is not an easy thing to do. And to do that, and that growth was incredible. Barack Obama inherited an economy that was in crisis. We had a 10% unemployment rate when we came in 2009. That came down over an 8-year period from 10% to 4.6%. Currently, we're talking about a great economy. We're talking about taking it from 4.6% to 3.8% unemployment. So when you see the growth in the economy that actually took place, the myths, we need to stop believing in those myths, because it is not true that that has happened. But what's important to recognize is we've done well, and as an economy, and Joe Biden has been a part of it. He was a senator, he was a vice president, and he has been a part of that growth. So I want to make sure we dispel some of those myths. So Nisha, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Sonal. There's a lot at stake in this election, and we've heard a little bit about what's at stake for us domestically. I can tell you that as someone who served as an official in the prior administration, that over the last 4 years, I have had so many governments reach out to me at very senior levels and privately say, what is happening? What is happening in the United States, and how disruptive it has been in the way in which our world itself is comprised. Since World War II, the United States has played an incredibly important role in establishing a world order, a rules-based world order, one in which we have a multiplicity of international organizations, and we have a set of rules and a set of norms that ensure that countries can have a seat at the table, even if they are not the mightiest or the richest. And it has been the US commitment to that rules-based order, and it has been the support of our ally partners and our like-minded countries that has enabled us to have the longest zone or time of peace and prosperity across the Indo-Pacific. In the last 4 years, what we have seen is that not only has that rules-based international order been challenged by the usual, suspects, the Russians, who really advantage themselves when they're able to play a disruptive role. We've seen an aggressive and assertive China that has essentially tried to undermine confidence in a rules-based order. But fundamentally, what has shaken the world is a United States and a Trump administration that seems to be walking away from the very institutions and the very principles that it created, that it founded, and that it had been supporting for the last 5 decades. It has created almost a sense of a free-for-all. And that has created some very dangerous situations, because when you have a vacuum in power, when you walk away from the norms that have guided us, it means that countries that have advantage that they're seeking to gain can use their economic might, their military might, can use subversive means to try to undermine the confidence in an international system. We have seen an administration that has undermined support for the United Nations, for the World Health Organization, for the World Trade Organization, and all of the different institutions that underpin our world order. I think a Biden administration fundamentally will be looking to reinvest and reimagine what the world order in a post-pandemic and new era should be. It means you're going to bring more voices to the table, including voices that in the past did not have a seat at the table. India is one of the most important voices in that sense. You have in India not only a rising economy and a rising power, but you have a country that shares the values, the aspirations, and the commitment to global norms that the United States has always espoused. I have seen and worked on the US-India relationship for nearly 25 years. In that time, as Anand noted, we have seen successive administrations in the United States and in India invest in this relationship and build it block by block. From the days when we were estranged partners post-Cold War with misguided policies that made India choose between the US and Russia, and India chose the path of non-alignment, to an understanding and an acceptance in the United States of what India represents as a global force, as a moral leader in the world, and as a convener of the group of 77. It represents kind of a third force. And now today, what you have seen is a India that has really come into its own, not as a balancing power, but as a leading power. That movement, I have to say, I'm really proud of the role that the Obama administration played and that I had the privilege and honor of playing for 4 years. That role has really become sharper with the rise to power of Narendra Modi as Prime Minister. Because Narendra Modi, in that famous speech before a joint session of Congress during the Obama administration, said we must overcome the hesitations of history. And that the path of natural convergence, natural alliance, that Prime Minister Vajpayee said way back then, that path holds promise for both the American people and the Indian people, but also is the path for really helping to address the global challenges and better the conditions of people around the world. So the partnership that was really deeply, solidified and cemented between the United States and India during the Obama administration with Prime Minister Modi, and has been advanced during a Trump administration in certain areas. Let me say that partnership is one that Joe Biden has invested deeply in throughout his career, from when he was in the Senate and led efforts in the Senate to pass the civil nuclear deal, when he took action to end sanctions against India after India had detonated a nuclear device or conducted nuclear tests, to when he came into the administration as vice president and played a really leadership role in ensuring that our US-India policy was elevated and was ambitious. And I saw him as he received and hosted Prime Minister Modi for lunch during Prime Minister's first visit to the United States in 2014. I saw him as numerous occasions as he convened the interagency to talk about the ambition of the US-India partnership and what it could achieve. And I know that as we look at a Biden presidency, that a rising India is going to be one of the most important and trusted partners that the United States has. Does that mean that there will be no divergence in our views on individual issues or policies that one country may have or the other? Of course not. We are incredibly complex societies with multifaceted foreign and domestic policies, and we have fundamentally different perspectives that we bring to the table. So neither will India fully understand or appreciate US policy on Iran or US policy vis-a-vis Pakistan or US policy in many other areas. And also the United States will have its own perspectives on many policies that India has. We expect that to be the case. We know that US and Indian relations have had the ability to manage those kinds of divergences and still continue to grow deeper and stronger. It's in fact what makes both of our societies, both of our democracies so incredibly strong and resilient, is that we don't march in lockstep, but we have the space. We know that India will have a policy and a relationship with Russia that is not going to be understood and accepted by all in America, but we're going to give India the space to do that. We're going to give India the space to have its own relationship with Iran and with other countries. And that's the kind of partnership we will always have. A Joe Biden administration will always have candid, respectful, and trusted conversations where we can air our disagreements and still deepen our contacts and deepen our partnership. We have seen that candidate Joe Biden has already declared definitively and unequivocally that the United States, under his leadership, will support India's candidacy for the Security Council. We have seen a Joe Biden that has underscored repeatedly that the US-India partnership is going to get bigger and stronger under his leadership as we look at how we can partner on COVID, how we can partner on looking at a new trading system between the United States, India, and like-minded partners, where trusted partnerships can help bring about some of the opportunities that are going to power our futures. And we have seen that a assertive China that is threatening and undermining global stability is one that the US, India, and other like-minded partners will work together to address in ways that expand the circle of opportunity, and lengthen that era of stability and security and peace. So I think for all of you who have concerns that the US-India relationship would suffer, let me put that fear to rest. And let me also just dispel some myths, because you can have an administration and a president who can speak the rhetorical speech that he gives in terms of appreciating or applauding the Indian government and his relationship with the Prime Minister of India, and yet have an incredibly transactional approach to the ties between our two countries, an approach that undermines India's economic aspirations by creating a very confrontational trade relationship, an approach that undermines the long-standing people-to-people ties and cultural ties between our two countries by enacting immigration policies that adversely impact Indians, Indian companies, Indian Americans with family members and that have been separated. And so I think having a broad-based and trusted relationship that looks at the comprehensive nature of the partnership, that is government to government, people to people, and all of society, is one that Joe Biden will bring in. And I am really confident and really proud of the approach that I think a Biden-Harris administration will bring to the US-India partnership. So with that, let me turn it back to Sanjeev. We would love to answer some of your questions in more detail and also talk to you about how you can get involved.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nisha, Anand, and Sonal. This has been an incredibly insightful, informative discussion. And having known the three of you like I do, I'm not in the least surprised. So thank you so much for your remarks. We do want to get to questions, but before we do that, I'm sure we don't want to lose the chance to make sure that the audience knows how they can get involved. I'm sure many of them are chomping at the bit to take action. And so for that, what I would like you to do, all of the attendees, is please look at your chat box. The chat box in this Zoom room is available towards the bottom. You click on the chat button and you can see the chat box. And there you will see a lot of information that is being posted by our colleagues from the Biden campaign, as well as in the Indians for Biden organization. You will also see some slides coming up. And the first slide I'd like to be put up is in regards to phone banking. This is how you can get involved and connect with Desi voters in battleground states. We'll take a moment to look at the phone banking schedule. And by the way, I should mention that for those of you who are first-time phone bankers and would like to get involved, phone banking training will be provided at these events. You will get a list of numbers to call in, and you don't have to reside in these specific states to participate in the phone banking. You can volunteer to participate in any of these phone banks. So we've got Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Texas on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And this will occur on every weekend between now and the end of the election cycle, which is on the 3rd of November. It's already started. Yeah, so please take a moment to look at that. The next slide is in regards to an event that is coming up on the 22nd of September. This is a conversation where Vice President Joe Biden will be live in discussion with Dr. Vivek Murthy, who was the Surgeon General of the United States under Barack Obama, and with the Indian American community. And this is on the 22nd of September. The RSVP link is provided. And for more information, you can contact Shreyash Dhar at the email address that is provided on the slide. You will also see some information in the chat room in regards to all of these events. Please feel free as well to email Indians for Biden and we can help direct you as well. indiansforbiden@gmail.com. Again, that's indiansforbiden@gmail.com. And the last event that I'd like to put up is in regards to a September 26th event that Indians for Biden will be hosting. This is next weekend on Saturday, and it's about Indian Americans who are winning in purple districts. We have North Carolina, Washington, Virginia, and Michigan, and state senators and state representatives from each of these states being featured at this event. It will be moderated by Mansi Patel, who is the Deputy Director of Indians for Biden National Council. This is again 26th of September at 8 p.m. Eastern, as you can see on the slide. All right, and you can volunteer for Indians for Biden as well. We desperately need volunteers. You can also sign up for our newsletter, and you will see information on that in the chat room. We encourage you to sign up and to volunteer. Now, let's get on with the questions. We have about 10 or 15 minutes left. And Nisha, Sonal, and Anand, I mean, I can see from the Q&A box that your discussion has so enthused our attendees today that if we were to answer all of the questions, we'd be here for another couple of hours. We don't have another couple of hours. We only have a few minutes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to group some of the questions and make sure that I direct them to you. Let me also mention very quickly in response to one of the questions about a video recording. Yes, a video recording of this event will be available, and you can look at the Indians for Biden social media and our newsletter, as well as some of our panelists' social media and as well, and you will see the recording available there. All right, so Anand, I want to bring you in back again. And the first question I'd like to direct to you is about the technology industry. One of the questions was, what will a Biden-Harris administration's position be towards the technology industry, and specifically in regards to a lot of the disinformation and fake news that is circulating that in fact threatens the very fundamentals of our democracy, as we've seen over the past few years especially. So Anand, how will a Biden-Harris administration approach the tech industry in this regard?
Sure. I also defer to Sonal and Nisha if you've got specifics on recent statements, but Biden has been clear, even during the primary season, that he was pro lifting of the protections that keep social media companies from being responsible for the content that they spread. This is something that, by the way, is an issue that's growing globally in other countries as well. We've seen over the course of the last couple of years that misinformation, both in social media and in the general media, have become a massive issue. Some might argue that that is, significantly biased towards one particular political set of views, or the use of the ability to manipulate media has been biased. But in reality, it is, many of us would agree, is a mess. There are lots and lots of fake news items being sent all the time on social media, otherwise in media, otherwise targeting folks like us. And I think that we've seen in the Democrats as a whole, Biden being very vocal about it, but also other candidates that we had seen who may end up being part of this administration throughout the course of this election season have made clear that reining in technology companies for the abuse of their position or their indifference to the types of utility that has been taken of them in shaping public opinion is something that has to be addressed. And I would expect a Democratic administration with Biden at the lead to continue to take steps towards making that happen. Sonal, would you like to add to that?
I think the only thing I want to add, and I can speak from my perspective when I was on Pete's campaign, but also thinking about this, is one, what Biden has also talked about is making sure the FTC, FCC, all of the different agencies that do regulation on technology are being consistent and making sure that we're holding the companies accountable to what they're supposed to be doing, which is ensuring that there is truth in information and that there is that information being spread. But we also as consumers have to be cautious because we are being told things. People are buying that information. If you use Facebook, if you use Twitter, if you use Instagram, if you use any social media, they're buying your data and they're then targeting you specifically on specific things. It's not just advertising, it's also political messaging. They're giving you just enough information and we share it. And we have to be cautious about what we are sharing and what we are seeing and where we are getting our information from. I think as consumers, until the regulatory side gets fixed, we also have to be cautious about what's coming to us, because this is super important for us to understand that data is being used as a ability for people to divide us further. And that policy, and what Biden has in his policies on technology are very much about ensuring that there's clarity and consistency, but we're also holding tech companies accountable for what they should be doing.
I'm just going to chime in because, one of the issues that I deal with quite a bit in my current job is on the U.S.-India partnership as it deals with issues of technology, of data governance, and the digital economy. And I do think that the digital economy moving forward is going to grow and grow in importance, both in terms of the size of the economy and in terms of the impact on our citizens. And we've seen that during COVID when we've all gone into a work from home environment. We've seen that in COVID in terms of how much we've relied on digital commerce. And so I think it's going to continue to be a high priority. And as we think about regulation, we're going to think about regulation also from the perspective of trying to make sure that we continue to build the economic impact and the economic opportunity that digital commerce is going to represent for the United States. And where I think India comes into the picture is that, there is also a lot of concern in the US and in India about whether the future economy is one that is going to be dominated by China, or whether the United States, India, and others are going to have a competitive place in that economy. And I think a collaborative approach between the US and India is actually going to be an important aspect of how we grow that economy and how we manage the challenges and the issues that our technological future puts before us in a way that safeguards the interests, the public interest, and balances that against the economic interest as well.
Thank you, all three of you. Sonal, I'd like to direct this next question to you. You spoke eloquently about the economy and healthcare and so forth. Joe Biden has said that people who like and love their health insurance will not be forced to give it up. Could you help us understand how exactly Joe Biden would do that?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and thank you for asking that. I think it's important to recognize that what a public option means and what it's not. What a public option means is that you can buy into an insurance policy that is a Medicaid policy, Medicare policy. What that means is that I, as a family member, if my brother wants to buy insurance policy, he can buy it through that, or if he wants to go on the exchange and buy it from United Healthcare, or if he wants to, or you want to buy it from Aetna, you're welcome to do that. So the public option is the ability to buy into Medicare, and the U.S. government providing U.S. government serving as a health insurance agency. But why that's important, and I think it's important for us to recognize, is what the government has the capacity to do is negotiate drug prices, is negotiate costs. There's a whole division within the healthcare system called Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, that they're working on how to lower costs for people and making sure there's innovation, making sure we're paying people to be healthy, not just go to get a service at a doctor's office, but actually keep people healthy. So what that does when you buy into a public option is the government is starting to provide better prices, better services. That means every other insurance company will also compete with the government, and the government will be competing with those insurance companies. So you can keep your insurance if you want to, if you have it through your company, if you have it through yourself, if you want it, you keep your Medicare. But the point is, you can also buy into it if you're a family and you don't have access to health insurance. And for someone like my sister who actually has to buy on the exchange, she has a $10,000 deductible, and she only gets an X amount of services, but she could buy into this public option and get a different level of services. So what that means is, again, it's a competition. It's not a government, you have to do the government. It allows the government to compete in the healthcare marketplace.
Thank you, Sonal. Nisha, I'd like to direct a couple of foreign policy things towards you. And by the way, let me just apologize. I see myself on the screen and I know that the light is a little weird. The way the blinds are right now and the angle of the sun streaming into my house makes my face look kind of weird right now. But anyway, this is not a professional TV production station, as you can imagine. But Nisha, you know, a couple of things. You know, you talked about the importance of dispelling myths and also the importance of highlighting where a Biden-Harris administration would be much more beneficial in terms of US-India relations than the Trump-Pence administration. So a couple of points on that regard. Can you talk a little bit about what a Biden-Harris position would be on green cards and immigration and H-1 visas? That's one. And then secondly, in the context of dispelling myths, there is a notion that Biden and Harris have, because they've made some statements in regards to Kashmir or CAA and so forth, NRC in India, that because of those statements, they would somehow be not quite as good for US-India ties. So can you talk about these two things?
Sure. So let me just say on immigration, I think that Joe Biden has been pretty clear that he believes that immigration has been an important asset, frankly, in keeping America at the top of the game, in keeping it innovative and entrepreneurial, and in creating opportunity for all Americans. Our economy has grown and has benefited because of the investments of immigrants. And he has said that he values the H-1B program, the skilled worker visa program, and would like to see more people be eligible under that. So I fully think that a Biden administration will take a much more careful and nuanced approach that looks at what is in the interest of the United States, what is in the interest of American companies and foreign companies that are investing in America, and calibrate its immigration policies to those realities. Because frankly, what we have seen is that if we do not allow talent to come on our shores, we will lose our jobs to offshoring into the places where that talent is resident. And countries like Canada, like Ireland or Israel are already competing for those jobs, saying that they will allow that talent to immigrate to their shores and that they will host those jobs in those geographies. So I think that this is a policy position that Joe Biden has articulated and has been very robust on, and it is something that business community has resoundingly voiced in on, which is that we need to be able to continue to attract talent from around the world, and India is certainly one of the most important markets and important source countries for that talent. Secondly, on your point with respect to the concern around some of the policy statements, let me just underscore here that as I said in my remarks earlier, that the US-India relationship is deep and it's broad, but it does not mean that there will be a blanket and blank check approval or alignment on all issues. There are numerous areas where the Indian government disagrees with US policies, and there will be areas where the US disagrees with Indian policies. In fact, the Trump administration, has also, the president has on numerous occasions publicly talked about mediating between between India and Pakistan over the fate of Kashmir. You have had, the State Department and the Religious Freedom Commission and the Office of Human Rights in the Trump administration make statements on India, on India's policies. So there is not a unique or different approach, but that the US has historically both had very deep ties with India and has often and will continue to stand for its own views on policies that it disagrees with. We have seen the European Union, we have seen the Gulf states, we have seen other countries all opine on this issue. So to single out a Biden campaign for having an opinion or a perspective, I think is misguided. And it is putting undue emphasis on one element of a very important relationship that the United States has prioritized in successive administrations. And I do give this administration credit for having prioritized a relationship with India. But let's not forget that this is built on the investments of the prior administration, the Obama administration, and before that, the Bush administration, and before that, the Clinton administration. And I know that a Biden administration will build even further and continue to elevate this relationship. It's important to keep all of that in perspective.
Thanks, Nisha. You know, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time, so I'll ask one last lightning round question that appeared in the Q&A box. On a recent episode of Fareed Zakaria's GPS program, he noted how the Trump administration in India, among people residing in India, is apparently quite popular. And the question really is, how do we, as Biden supporters, Biden volunteers, and people who are obviously very passionately interested in the Biden-Harris victory, how do we ensure that that kind of support from India does not translate back into support for Trump here in the Indian American community? Because as you know, there's always, conversations that are going on between Indians residing in India and the Indian American community here. So lightning round, quick 1 minute between the three of you.
Well, I'm happy to take a start at that. I mean, one, I think that let's remember we're the ones here in America who vote for our president. Secondly, that I think India, I was there when Barack Obama visited India a number of years ago, have been there when other presidents have visited. Like, India tends to like American presidents regardless of which denomination they are. There was a long joke for George Bush at one point in time that George Bush was better liked in India than he was in America, right? And so I think that, India will have its opinions on whatever leaders it has around the world. But I think Nisha has very succinctly clarified that, there's no party in America that owns the relationship with the US and India. And India, I can't speak for the country, but India has done a pretty good job, befriending governments around the world, not just in the United States over the past decade or more. And I suspect that they will find very diplomatic ways to continue to build a relationship between these natural allies, and would recommend that we recognize that we're not deciding on a president in America based on what Indians in India think, even if we're related to them.
I'm gonna let Nisha and Anand speak about the India portion, because Anand lived in India, Nisha worked with India. I'm gonna speak a little bit about ours in the United States. Look, this is an election about what we want the United States to be. We all immigrated here. I'm a first generation immigrant. My parents came here. We all came here because we wanted to be a part of a country that allowed everyone to succeed. I was one of those people that has been, in similar to the Ruth Bader Ginsburg comment, I was one of those people in one generation, not even one generation, the same generation that I emigrated here as Nisha, have been able to work at the White House, have been able to work in two White Houses, at the Clinton administration and the Obama administration, and have been lucky enough to be at those places to be able to work on important issues. So I think this is about, where do we want the future of America wanted to go. We came here because we wanted to create a better life for our kids. Now we also have to think about what is the better life for our grandkids? What's the better life for the next generation of Indian Americans that are going to grow up here, the immigrants that are coming here? How do we make sure they have a chance to live here, to succeed here? That is actually what we are voting about. What we are voting for is the future of America. What we are voting for is what our kids and grandkids will inherit. What will they be able to what will they be able to do? Will they be allowed in this country? Are they going to be seen as Americans in this country with an Indian heritage? Or are they going to be seen as told to go back to the country where they came from? That is what we're voting on. And character matters. If we really believe in anything, we should understand that when we speak about a president of the United States, character matters. You know, it's why we all stand for how we stand with our kids, how we teach our kids, how we help our kids. We believe in character. We train them to be good moral characters. And that also matters in the president of the United States. So with that, Nisha, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. You know, Sanjeev, one thing I want to give a real commendation to the Indian American community is that there has been passion and persistence in the community in trying to deepen and strengthen the relationship between our two countries. I remember 25 years ago when I was working on Capitol Hill, where there was so little happening between the United States and India that really the only thing we could get any kind of congressional interest or support on was to have a resolution once a year commending India on another year of its democracy. Because frankly, there was nothing else happening in the relationship. And it is this community, this Indian American community, that has invested blood, sweat, toil in really, you know, prioritizing this relationship, underscoring its importance. In fact, so much of the political activism of the early generations has been focused on becoming politically active so that we could try to get some stronger relationship between the two countries. And I respect that tremendously. India is a global power. It is a force to be reckoned with. India is sure-footed and confident on the global stage. India is engaging countries from a perspective and a position of power, of influence, and of global standing. And the United States has recognized as well as supported India's rise. So we need not fear that we will go back to the days when the US and India were estranged partners, estranged allies. We need not fear that. The United States and India will continue to converge. Our strategic interests are aligned. We will continue to deepen our partnership. But India benefits from an America that is sure-footed, from an America that is dependable, stable, strategic, and an America that is engaged in the global arena and building and investing in global institutions and alliances. So an America that Joe Biden will lead will be an America that is, again, a leader in the world. It is a leader in our global institutions, and it'll be a leader that India will be proud to partner with and advance global goods like climate change, advance global issues. And I think that is what we all want to see. America that is leading at home and leading abroad. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha, Anand, and Sonal. You know, at the outset, before I asked this question, I said lightning round, and I'm glad your answers were longer than lightning round per se, because as always, they were really insightful. You know, Nisha, I do want to turn it over to you for the close out of respect for everybody's time. Like I said, we could go on for 2 hours. This discussion has been illuminating and pun not intended. But before I do that, Nisha, I do want to thank two people who have been instrumental in putting this event together. I want to thank Vaibhav Jain of the Biden campaign. Thank you, Vaibhav. I know you're in the background doing yeoman work. And Mansi Patel, the Deputy Director of Indians for Biden National Council. who has also been a huge source of help in getting this event together. So thanks, Vaibhav and Mansi. But with that, Nisha, it's over to you for the close.
In closing, I simply want to say that this election is so critically important. We want all of you to not only get out there and vote, and if you want to vote, you need to know that you can't wait until the last minute to make your plan on how to vote. You need to make your plan today. Voting in the age of COVID means you have to think about what you're going to do, whether it's mailing in your ballot, early voting, or in-person voting on election day. You need to make a plan. You need to make sure that you're registered, and you need to make sure that you, not only that you yourself vote, but that you're encouraging your family members, your friends, your networks to also get out there and vote. The Indian American community is going to make a difference in a number of close states. And so we need to make sure that our voice is heard, our voice is counted, and that we are advancing our interest. Secondly, you can give of your time. Sanjeev went through this earlier. You can give of your time to reach out to your networks, to do some phone banking, to do some postcard writing, to volunteer on election day, to be a poll monitor or during early voting. You can get involved. And then lastly, this is an election that is going to require all of us to also dig deep and support financially. So if you have the means, please consider providing some donations to the campaign. It's going to be a costly legal fight. It's going to be a all-out campaign. And now with a Supreme Court justice on the line, we know that the other side is going to be galvanizing and mobilizing, and we want to make sure that we are also mobilizing aggressively on this. And on that point, I just want to note that the Obama-Biden administration has done more to advance Indian Americans in the judicial system, appointing judges like Amit Mehta, like Sri Srinivasan, and we want to also make sure that that representation matters in that area as well. So please, please, please get involved, get active, and let's make this happen. Thank you. With that, I think we're going to let you go back to the rest of your Saturday afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone.